There was a great description of rock star lifestyles at one time given by some rock star in the 60s. And it might have even been a Beatle. Might have been John Lennon that said, "Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, man." Sex, drugs, and rock and roll is what the Mike Church Show is always about, or is about, and what it always has been about. It's always been about, what if you see something, you're driving along in your car, or you're watching television, and you happen to either hear or see something, and if you could say anything about it to anyone, what would you say? And that's what I try to do. I try to be the guy that says what you thought or what you wish that you could say.
Then if you have a bunch of illegals packed in the back of your dry van, are you allowed to use the HOV lanes on the interstate?
I'm sorry, sir. Why'd you stop me, officer? You're in the HOV lane, and it's just you in the car. Well, that's because you don't know about the 8 wetbacks I got stuffed in the trunk. I mean, if you wanted to tell your boss to fuck off or whatever, you can't do that unless you want to lose your job. But if I describe a similar situation to you, and I told your boss to pip off, well, then you lived vicariously through me. You're being in New York City today. We're here all week long. Front page of USA Today. Guess who's on it? Mario Cuomo. Does this guy ever go away? He's like Clinton. Are we done with you? We're now cursed with your son, Andrew Cuomo. If you've always wanted to go up to, one of these well-dressed women who look down their nose at you and sneers at you, you could never get in their pants or whatever, and it really bugs you, and you always wanted to just walk up to one of them and just call her a bitch and just say, I wouldn't do you with his. I do that. On a daily basis, and those are just 2 examples, but just take anything that happens in an average guy's life that he probably has no control over the circumstances, and talk about that in a way that he wishes he could talk about to the people around him, to his wife, to his girlfriend, to his boss, to the bartender, and talk about it like that. And that's always been the attitude of the show. I am probably the world's oldest living 21-year-old. I haven't got anybody staring me down in my David Allan Coe shirt, man. I am totally disappointed.
Because you won't walk around with it on.
I don't have to piss yet. When I gotta piss, believe me, I'll make the block.
Got it.
I will show everyone the real redneck that they thought they were going to see on day one when I arrived here in New York City. Mike Church. I just got my driver's license. Today is my 21st birthday, and I just acquired the ability to legally drink in this country. And that's me. I'm the world's oldest living 21-year-old. I never grow tired of partying. I never grow tired of having beers with anyone, or having barbecues, or, just acting like a kid. I might be the world's oldest living 14-year-old sometimes. Everyone that works in radio has this, and no one ever says it. You don't say it to your listeners because you don't want them to know, because it's not your job to say that, and that is... when somebody says, what drives you? Fear, man. I'm freaking horrified, terrified. When I turn those microphones on, at whatever time it is to start a show or a segment or an hour, I am absolutely mortified at the thought that there's an audience out there listening to this. And that's the adrenaline that drives you. I mean, that is really what compels you and makes you produce what you hope is funny or what you hope is relevant. It's fear. I have a fear of silence. And it could either be silence that I'm going to run out of things to say, or it could be silence that I said something that I thought was hysterically funny and no one laughed at. So it's fear. Fear is the driving force. And if you're in this business and you do what I do, that's probably your answer, though you probably wouldn't be able to drag it out of very many people.
the material that I like the most and I like to talk about the most about is I would just describe it as guy stuff. I mean, it's a broad thing, but if it would be on the pages of Maxim magazine or Stuff magazine, then I would probably want to talk about it. And I look for that. I also look for stuff, and this may seem this may seem or sound disingenuous, but it's really true. I always try and think of, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of guys and gals that listen to a show like mine, and what are they doing? Before they got in the car to go listen to the radio or go make a sales call or drive the load to Phoenix or whatever, what were they doing? What were they thinking about? And those are really my favorite things to talk about, is things that we all do on a daily basis. I mean, it may sound just insignificant, but it's not. I mean, really, you don't have to pick something serious, and my favorite things to talk about are things that are just lifestyle things. I also like, because I'm so opinionated about these things, I like certain political subjects, because I really, I despise the evils of communism and socialism, and anytime I see that, I seem to have a sense for that, and anytime I see that or I hear anything about it where somebody is practicing it or is talking about it in a favorable light, that can set me off. It's one of my favorite things, is to just, from a common man, common American's point of view, to just call bullshit on that. And I like doing that. I always have liked doing that since I was 12 years old. 1/3 of all government money now goes to fund TennCare in Tennessee. That doesn't leave any money to build NASCAR tracks, man. This is dangerous stuff for you people in Tennessee. That doesn't leave any money for it. It doesn't leave any money for chewing tobacco subsidies. Callers are a mixed bag of tricks, and that's such a cliche. I love the listeners. I really do. I'm never short of amazed at the amount of people that listen to and respond to any of the shows that I've ever done, no matter where it's been.
Luke, will you do me a favor?
Sure.
Will you say something hot to me in French? I never get to hear men speak French.
Oh, God. Don't do it, dude.
Please?
No, dude, don't do it.
The line between hot and dirty and sexy is too easy to cross, and I better not.
You know what you do, dude? All right, look, here's what you do. Tell her you want to shove your big fat speculum in her and crank it up. Just tell her that. Don't shut her up.
And it takes a lot of balls, it takes a lot of guts to call a radio show. I can tell you, before I was in broadcasting, I called some radio shows. And I'm just like the rest of you people. I got butterflies. My palms got sweaty. I got nervous. So, even though I may goof on you because you called and you stunk even the bad calls. I love that guy that called and made an ass of himself that I hung up on and ripped for another 15 minutes, because he provided material. And the people that do pick the phone up and call, they're brave. To actually get on the air in front of all those people and, man, try and make sentences is not an easy thing to do. So if anyone thinks that I don't like the callers or that I crack on them and all that, that's just, I'm trying to get the most out of them. They called me, they took the risk, and now I'm trying to get the most out of that call for the benefit of everyone else who's listening to the Mike Church Show or whatever we call it on that day. It's hard. A 4-hour radio show where you don't play records, that's a talk show, takes an additional 8 hours a day to produce. And when I say that, I mean that's not just preparation, because everyone always asks me, well, how long do you show prep? How long do you study? And it's like, some days it may be 3 hours, and I just may not be satisfied that I have enough. Some days it may be 30 minutes, and I'm like, I'm good to go. You know, I just feel good about it. I'm going to wing it. I know I have a couple of things that I want to hit on, and I'm just going to let it take on a life of its own. But as far as the production and putting all the pieces and the bits and everything together, it's a long, hard process. A lot of people are involved in it along the way, and it takes expertise. And there are many, many, many hours in producing 30 seconds of pre-recorded radio or comedy that people never see. You'll never see all the work that you did in the recording studio, in the mixing studio, and all that. And that happens on a daily basis. So I'm shorting it. The ratio is, for every hour you're on the air, it's going to take you 3 hours to make that hour. So if you're on the air 4 hours a day, then 12 hours a day you're working to make your product. I was listening to a radio station in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1991, and was a huge fan of Rush Limbaugh's, and there was a radio station that put all local talent on the air, and these guys were out there. When I say out there, I mean out there. And I got hooked on it, and I was one of their callers. Sometimes I would go by the radio station and I'd go bug the host to, go drop some news articles off. Hey man, did you see this? And became a regular there. And I went to an event that they had, that their radio station sponsored. It was like one of those town hall meetings. And they said anyone who wants to come up and speak can take the microphone for 2 minutes. So I went up there and I had no idea what I was going to say. Quite frankly, I don't remember much of it. It was some ramble about taxes, I think it was. And when I was done, after the town hall meeting was over, I was going to leave. I went to the reception that they had, and the guy that was the program director came up to me and he said, "You ever thought about getting into broadcasting? Yeah, you've got a really good voice." And I said, "No, I really haven't." He said, "You should come by the radio station someday and and cut a demo. You may be good at this." The program director asked me to come by the radio station one day and make a demo tape. I might be good at being on the air. So I said, okay. So I did. I went by one day and I sat me down in a room. First time I'd ever been in a studio. And he basically said, okay, fill up 12 minutes and when you're done recording it, rewind this and then put a cassette tape in here and then dub it to a cassette tape and bring it to my office. And I said, okay. I said, you're not going to stay in here and help me? And he's like, no, you're on your own. So I recorded that 12 minutes, went and brought the tape, sat it on his desk, and he was busy, he didn't have time to listen to it, and I left. About a month later, I'm listening to that radio station where those people were so far out there, and none of them are there. They're playing music. And I'm like, what in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Because nobody knew. So I trying to get the radio station, got a busy signal for a day. Finally got a hold of one of the hosts whose number I had and asked him, and he said, well, they pulled the plug. There was too much bad stuff going on. People were, we were breaking too many rules. The owner, the guy that actually owns the station, kicked us out. So I said, well, that sucks. And no sooner had I got off the phone with him than I got a call from the guy who was the program director who asked me to make the tape. And he said, hey, did you hear what happened? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I listened to the tape, and I think you can do a radio show. And we need radio hosts now. Would you be interested in coming by and talking to us about doing a show? And I went, sure. So I went by and I talked to him about it. We mapped the whole thing out. He drew a clock up and he said, okay, you start Monday morning. This was a Wednesday. You start Monday morning. So I went in there on, I still know the date, it was April the 11th, 1992. I went in that studio, and the radio station was WSLA in Slidell, Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans. And I went in that station with every newspaper I could buy that Monday morning, and my highlighter and my razor blades to cut the stories out that I wanted. And went on the air that day. When he turned that microphone on, man, it was on, dude. I didn't get a call back to the caller thing. I did a whole week on that radio station, and I didn't get one call. I did 10 hours, and I didn't get one call. That was my baptism of fire. I was working at WRBZ 850 The Buzz in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was right after Hurricane Fran. And I just started there. It was one of my first gigs in a major market on a station that people could actually hear. And there was a lot of opposition to me because I was so wild. And after the hurricane, there were like, Raleigh's a town of 400,000 or so, and 300,000 of those people had no electricity. And I was sitting there, and I was doing this radio show on a generator, and I found out that the governor of North Carolina, Jim Hunt, who was the governor at the time, was riding the aftermath of the storm out at his ranch, where he lives in rural North Carolina. He was one of the first people to get hooked back up. How strange is that? He was not at the governor's mansion in Raleigh. He was in his ranch taking care of his horses. And he had furloughed all state employees to tell them to go home, and had trusted them that they were going to go and cut trees down and dig people out. Well, I just went on a tirade, and a lot of people were upset about it, and I hit a nerve that day. And we were about 2 hours into this, and our phone rang. The phone was ringing nonstop. We had 5 call-in lines. For 2 hours, the governor had been on his cell phone trying to get on the show. And he finally got through. And the message came up, Governor Hunt is on line 4. And I went like, yeah, right. And the producer at the time, Al Wadarski, came in and said, no, Governor Hunt is really on line 4. And I didn't miss a beat. This is all on the air. And I said, Governor Hunt's on line 4? Well, you know what? He can wait in line just like all the other callers out there. I made him wait through 3 other callers, and he did. And when I put him on, he was livid. Livid. And I have it all on tape. He called me names, screamed at me, and said I was uneducated. Some of the stuff that listeners usually throw at me that don't like the show. And then, you know, I asked him the questions I wanted to ask him. We kissed and we made up, and that was it. So I got the governor of North Carolina to actually pick the phone up and call a radio show because he was so upset and get on the air and defend himself. Thanks for being with us today. We will be back here tomorrow and all week long. We're here on in New York City from the Sirius Studios. And in an hour, we'll be on channel 148. It's the Mike Church Show. That is the uncensored, R-rated version of this program. And we got some great stuff for you people this week. We will see you in an hour.